Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we want to take, at least I want to take, and I'm hoping you guys agree with me, another look at Celebi Prime. You see, Celebi Prime is incredibly interesting in the Pokemon trading card game because it started off as a card that was complete and utter trash, and somehow became a card that was absolutely brilliant and at the centre of one of the very best decks in the entire game. It came out in the Triumphant expansion, and what was really weird is that all of the other primes, these were the chase cards at the time, Pokemon Prime, all the other primes in Triumphant were good. Like every single one of them, other than Celebi, was hyped to be good. So everybody thought that Electrode was going to be rather good. You could essentially KO it and then accelerate a bunch of energy, and it was played with a bunch of stuff later on like Cabalion and Terrakion, etc. But this, when it came out, people were like, oh, that's really nice because you can get a bit of energy acceleration going. We had Yanmega and Magnezone that were actually played as a pair for a little while. Magnezone could do a huge amount of damage, very, very similar to Blacephalon, while also having an ability that let you draw until you had 6 cards in your hand. It was played with Yanmega. It also won the World Championships with M-Ball. Magnezone draws cards, M-Ball pops energy down, Magnezone blows up the energy to win. And then Yanmega was also played in Stage 1 decks with stuff like Donphan, for instance. Mew was really hyped as a real toolbox deck that could use the attacks of any of your Pokemon in the Lost Zone. Saw a lot of play in that regard. And we had Absol that could put Pokemon into the Lost Zone, which really helped in that regard. We had Gengar Prime, a Pokemon so good it was hyped as potentially breaking the game. I did do a video about Gengar with Lost World. I'll pop a link in the description. But essentially that was supposed to be a whole new way to play the game. Get 6 Pokemon in the Lost Zone, declare yourself the winner. The sky is falling! Turned out to be fine, but did not set the world on fire like we assumed it might. And then Machamp was a great partner for the Stormfront Machamp, as well as Donphan Prime. Basically, every single one of these, and I don't have time to go into them all in huge detail, we've covered some of them. Ones we've covered, I'll pop links in the description. The other ones, we'll get there, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get there. But things like Magnezone winning the World Championships, Donphan, Gengar, etc., I've done videos. I'll pop links in the description. The point is that there were 8 primes in Triumphant, and 7 of them were heralded as, ooh, that's tasty. And then we had Celebi Prime. And Celebi Prime was not hyped. Celebi Prime was not supposed to be good. Everyone just thought it was going to be a little bit pants. I mean, it's got 60 HP, which is very, very low. And it's got an attack which is unusable. 30 damage for a Grass Psychic and a Colorless. And then you prevented all damage by Stage 1 or Stage 2 Pokemon. And there were plenty of evolved Pokemon at the time, but a 60 HP Pokemon that needs a super awkward energy cost, it was never going to be good, and it wasn't good. That attack, even when Celebi was good, and clearly by the point of this video, you know that Celebi got good, otherwise this will be a kind of pointless video. Even when it got good, this attack was never part of what made it good. Okay then. But it had an ability. And the ability said that once during your turn, if it was your active Pokemon, you may attach a grass energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. But this power couldn't be used if Celebi was affected by a special condition. That was a standard thing of Poke Powers in the past. We don't see it with abilities, but it was standard back then. And nobody cared. It saw no play. You could pick Celebi up for a couple of dollars. I mean, it got to the point Pokemon went and released a product. They released the World of Illusion box, And it was on these cool ones. You got a bunch of packs, you got a jumbo promo, and they chucked us a Celebi Prime. And at the time, people were really unhappy. Why are they giving us Celebi Prime? Of all the primes from Triumphant, this is literally the worst. Do they just have a bunch of Celebi they need to get rid of, etc., etc.? People were really genuinely unhappy when this product got announced because Celebi was such a bad card that we just didn't want any more versions of it. And then a short while later, we ended up in a situation where a bunch of people went and bought Celebi for about $2 each and then went and resold it for so much more money. And there were two things that happened. Although really it was one. It was Next Destinies. Next Destinies came out, and ladies and gentlemen, Next Destinies changed everything. And there were two cards in Next Destinies that turned Celebi from Y to Ooh. And they were Mewtwo EX and Sky Arrow Bridge. Those two cards made all the difference. So Mewtwo EX, and when this card came out, it is hard to overstate how much of an impact it had on the game. This changed the game overnight. 2 colorless energy, 20 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. And this was when Pokemon had quite a bit less HP. 180 really was the higher end, but there were lots that were lower. We had double colorless energy at the time, and we had plus power. And the entire game just basically denigrated into the Mewtwo wars, because if Mewtwo had a double colorless energy on, then a Mewtwo with a third energy or a plus power could KO that original Mewtwo, though really you wanted the plus power, because if you popped a third energy on, then your opponent's next Mewtwo could KO you with a double colorless energy. And it literally got to the point where you just wanted the first Mewtwo KO, and then you trade and win. It was fun. Kind of. Okay. Here's the thing, though. Sky Arrow Bridge was arguably as important. Sky Arrow Bridge said that the retreat cost for each basic Pokemon is 1 colorless energy less. It gave Celebi free retreat. And this also made a gigantic difference, because now you don't need to have an extra switch. You can just have a Sky Arrow Bridge. So look at it this way. I've got a Celebi on the bench. If I want to get Celebi in the active to attach an energy to Mewtwo, and then get it out the active, I either need 2 switches, or I need a switch and an energy. But the thing is, if I'm retreating Celebi using an energy, that just gets rid of the energy that I attached with Celebi. That's pointless. But with Sky Arrow Bridge, a switch turns into attach a grass energy from your hand. And Mewtwo attacks for colorless energy, right? So it doesn't matter what energy you're using. And now all of a sudden, Mewtwo with Sky Arrow Bridge means you can use Celebi. And you can use 2 free, if you're really lucky, 4 Celebi a turn, to just pile energy onto Mewtwo and smash. And back then we had plenty of other ways to accelerate energy. We had Typhlosion Prime, but that was a stage 2, so it was a little bit awkward. We had the aforementioned Emboar, but that was a stage 2. We had the combination of Pachirisu and Shaymin, which incidentally did see quite a lot of play with Zekrom, but you still ended up in the awkward position of, I can move 2 energy over, but that's it. And when you played against Zekrom decks with Mewtwo, playing Celebi decks with Mewtwo, you had a huge advantage because it was so much easier for you to get the third energy than it was for Zekrom decks. Yes, any Mewtwo deck can play double colorless energy and plus power, but being able to put the third energy on gave you a huge advantage. And back then, it very much was the case that if you didn't play Mewtwo, an opposing Mewtwo could just wreck your entire setup. There was no other partner for Mewtwo which could do this as well. Now, Darkrai decks came around, and Darkrai decks were able to use a combination of Dark Patch to accelerate an extra energy, and then energy switch to move it over. And that did work, and that did see play. But the thing, and this was absolutely crucial, Darkrai could stand up to Mewtwo on its own. 180 HP, resistance to Psychic, and it did a bunch of damage. So because Darkrai could stand up to Mewtwo, it wasn't so invested in the Mewtwo wars. It was still easier to accelerate energy to Mewtwo using Celebi than Dark Patch and Energy Switch. Celebi became that card that made Mewtwo all the better. And now you're accelerating energy with Celebi, and you're playing double colourless energy, so any colourless attacker was made instantly better. And to be honest, the two best other than this were Tornadus and Tornadus. You had the non-EX Tornadus that did 80 damage for free energy and moved one to the bench. And then you had the EX Tornadus that either did 60 damage for double colourless if there was a stadium in play, or 100 damage for free energy, flip a coin if Tails discard an energy. The thing is, you can only play 4 double colourless energy in your deck, so being able to attach a basic energy and then a grass with Celebi, that made all the difference. I believe I made a video about the deck with which I grinded into Worlds, which relied on Celebi and Mewtwo. I played the EX Tornadus, not the non-EX, but I also played Terrakion, which for those of you paying attention meant I played double colourless and basic fighting and basic grass. But then in one turn with Terrakion, I could attach a basic fighting and I could attach a grass using Celebi. And because I'm playing Sky Arrow Bridge to give free retreat and I'm playing a bunch of switching cards anyway, it meant I could play Smeargle in my deck incredibly easily, and when Smeargle was in the active, you could look at your opponent's hand and copy a supporter card. The good news is that CMT did make it to be printed as a World Championship deck. The bad news is that it was because of a junior semi-finalist, not even finalist. When we got to Worlds in 2012, it wasn't quite the all-wrecking deck we thought it might be. Still made top 8 in Masters, still got printed as a Worlds deck. Let's be clear, it was still one of the very best decks in the entire format. Unfortunately, could not in the end at the World Championship stand up to Darkrai, and that's a little bit sad. But for a card that started off as the worst Prime in the entire set and made people angry when it got printed in a lovely little product, to then go on and become the center of the one of the very best decks in the format, that's pretty awesome. And it's partly because it allowed Mewtwo to be great, and it's partly because it meant you were playing Sky Arrow Bridge and Switch, which meant you could also play Smeargle. It was not because of the attack. But in terms of a rags to riches story, in terms of garbage to gold, you'd be hard-pressed to find another card in the history of the Pokemon trading card game that started off so bad and got so good. So this is the point where I want to hear all of your memories about Celebi. So let me know in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, or you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of cards that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.